What's up guys, it's Chris aka Relaxed Latest back at it again with another video. Sorry this video took a couple months to get out. I was a little bit busy, but hopefully we can get back to a regular upload schedule. So hopefully this video can help some of you that are either new or looking to play a class that's faster at clearing dungeons than G Fuel was at dropping Keemstar. What are we talking about today? Today we're going to be covering the Neon Ninja. What its abilities are, what the best build is, how to use it, and how to level. I see some of you out there with stats spread wider than Caterino's legs and running about as fast as a bipedal dog, so hopefully by the end of this video you'll be rubber banding 3 dungeons back and having people stare like an Asmongold thumbnail. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Let's start off with the Neon Ninja's passive, Shining Star. Whenever you basic attack an enemy, you build up a stack which increases the amount of shurikens you end up throwing up to 3. These shurikens deal double critical damage at 3 stacks. Then your passive ability is later upgraded to the heuristic Hack Star, which upgrades your shurikens to 1 big piercing shuriken that applies a root to all enemies. Let's move on to the next ability, the Neon Ninja's Shadow Flip. This is your main movement skill and your main damage skill. Once you get 3 stacks, you can use the ability to flip backwards and enter a stealth mode, giving you invisibility and increased movement speed until you attack. This allows you to actually shoot the shuriken stacks that you build up. This ability is so versatile. You can use it as a strict movement ability to flip backwards. You can use it to proc your shurikens. You can even use it as an escape tool if you need to get out of a dungeon quick, say you're low on life. Such a good ability. Next, let's move on to Neon Ninja's second ability, Stasis Blade. You dash forward, dealing damage and rooting enemies in place. Now, however good of an ability this is, you won't see yourself using it too much because it doesn't increase your movement at all and doesn't deal enough damage to warrant using very often. Plus, it's a pretty big energy hog. Next, we're moving on to Final Technique, the Neon Ninja's ultimate ability. It makes your basic attacks shoot little beams, and it deals 300% physical damage. It also refreshes the root of your Stasis Blade. Not a very good ability. You won't find yourself using this often, if at all. Now that we've got all of the Neon Ninja's abilities covered, let's move into how to build the Neon Ninja. How do we go about getting the Neon Ninja to run dungeons faster than a cracked out Usain Bolt? Quite simply, in Trove there are really only 2 ways to build characters. You can either be a tank or a DPS. There are a couple of exceptions to this rule, and the Neon Ninja is actually one of them. With that being said, let's take a look at the stats you want to prioritize on the Neon Ninja, and then after that I'll give an example with the build I'm currently running on my Neon Ninja. The stats you want to prioritize on the Neon Ninja are as follows: critical hit, movement speed, critical damage, physical damage, and light. Now these aren't the only stats you want to run on your Neon Ninja, they're just the most important. Some other notable stats include energy regen, jump, magic find, and attack speed. Before we get into the build that I'm currently running, we're going to do a breakdown of why the stats rank the way they do, and some quick notes about each of the stats that you're going to be running. So we're starting off with critical hit. It's the most important stat for the Neon Ninja. It doesn't matter if you can make it to a dungeon faster than Jimmy John's delivers if it takes you forever to kill any of the dungeon bosses. Prioritize getting 90% or above if you plan on farming efficiently with the Neon Ninja. The next most important stat is movement speed. The faster you get from dungeon to dungeon, the more gem boxes you get per hour, the more efficiently you're farming, which is the whole point of running the Neon Ninja. After movement speed, critical damage is essential. This scales your damage higher than almost any other stat in the game, hands down. 5% crit damage is almost always more valuable than 50% physical damage. However, on the other side of that same coin, physical damage also scales your damage, just a little bit less so. However, you need a solid fundamental base of physical damage before your critical damage starts scaling higher. So, still invest and prioritize in physical damage because they both help each other in a symbiotic sort of relationship. Moving on to the notable stats, we're talking about energy regen. Energy regen is one of the most useful stats for the Neon Ninja. You're backflipping all the time as the Neon Ninja, and that takes a decent bit of energy from your character. So, if you can be regenning energy faster, you can continue to backflip more. It requires you to touch down on the ground or in the sea less, and it allows you to infinitely backflip over oceans to help you get from dungeon to dungeon even faster. So you want at least one piece of gear with some energy regen on your Neon Ninja. Once you reach U8 or above, you need jumps to farm efficiently. Jumps are everything, whether you're jumping from Sky Lake to Sky Lake, jumping from boss room to boss room under the air islands, jumping across lava lakes. This is so helpful to increase your movement speed and your dungeons per hour. The only note about this is once you've completed enough dragons, you'll usually have enough base character jump to skip having this on a piece of gear or your ring. I would recommend having at least one piece of gear with the jump stat on it. Magic Find doesn't increase the speed you do dungeons at, however it can increase the amount of flux you make per hour. And since you use a ton of bombs when farming, it can help offset the cost of either buying or having to go out and farm for bombs. So I would recommend having Magic Find on a few pieces of gear if your damage is sufficient to 1 to 2 shot in U9/10. Just a quick note, you don't need Magic Find if you're following my method for making flux from my last video, so go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, moving on to attack speed, here is a hot take. You don't need attack speed on your Neon Ninja. The goal of playing the Neon Ninja is to get 3 stacks built up so you can proc a max damage shuriken, and increasing your attack speed doesn't save more than a couple seconds per dungeon if you're being generous. So even if you scale that over a few hours of farming, you don't go above a couple minutes of time saved. In my opinion, Magic Find is a better stat to have, however, you shouldn't worry too much about this. They're pretty much interchangeable, and either won't affect the way you play the build or the speed you move, so just pick whichever you prefer. Moving on to Light. Light is required to farm in U10 with any efficiency, but just like a high school relationship, it doesn't matter until you get to 4th base. Don't worry about it until you get to Endgame, seriously. Even when you do, Light comes pretty naturally. You get it on your Cosmic Gems, you get it on your gear, and you get it from banners that you get naturally from doing delves. So, I would worry more about getting the other stats maxed before you worry about maxing your Light. Just a quick touch on max health, I think it's a stat that should be avoided. You need all the damage you can get in U10, and max health just ends up taking up a stat that can be occupied by a damage stat. So, if you're only planning on farming in U9, I guess, you can end up running a couple of pieces of max health and still be fine. You'll still be one-shotting bosses and moving from dungeon to dungeon. However, I would recommend skipping it until you've handled every other stat in the game. Now that you know what stats to prioritize, what does an endgame build look like? This is the build I'm currently running. You can change up the stats to suit your gameplay and preferences, but this is what works best for me. On your weapon, you want to get physical damage, movement speed, magic find, and energy regen. Now your face and hat are both interchangeable in terms of stats, however, on each of them, you want to get at least one with max health, movement speed, magic find, and critical damage, and you want one of them to have max health, movement speed, jump, and critical damage. And then on your ring, this is a fill stat, so you can either get magic find, jump, or energy regen, depending on what you want to run. Now again, all of the gear is pretty interchangeable, so just change the stats around to whatever your preferences are and whatever you use in gameplay. The Neon Ninja is pretty customizable within this build. For your emblems, you want to run the Martial Emblem and the Trailblazing Emblem. The Trailblazing Emblem helps you get from dungeon to dungeon quicker, and the Martial Emblem doubles your damage when you need that little extra push for a one-shot. If you deal enough damage in U9, you can swap out your Martial Emblem for the Zealous Emblem. This can be used to effectively backflip across the map. So what you do is you just backflip, and then when you run out of energy, You pop that while you're in the air, and it just allows you to keep backflipping so that you can make it to your destination quicker without having to touch down on the ground. As for your ally, you can either run the Rapt, Berserker, or the Animated Jug. The Animated Jug gives you extra light, however if you don't have it quite yet, you can use the Rapt Berserker in the meantime. They both serve the same purpose of boosting your speed and HP after a kill, but if you're farming in U10, it is imperative to get the Animated Jug. For your subclass, you want to run the Lunar Lancer. When you trigger the Lunacy mode, you get a huge boost to movement speed and attack speed, which helps you get from dungeon to dungeon quicker and proc your shuriken stacks quicker. For your Flask, you want to run the Death-Defying Vial. This is pretty much the best in slot for every class in the game. It allows you to focus on dealing DPS so you don't have to worry about dying in the middle of a dungeon and focusing on popping your Flask. So while you're farming in the Topside, I highly recommend this Flask. However, if you're farming in U9 or lower, you can either run the Elysian Bandolier for the extra Flask capacity, or any of the Flasks that offer charge regen. The Quester's Vial, the Valorous Vial, or the Conjurers Crucible Vial are some notable alternatives you can use. Now, as for your empowered gems, these are the 4 you want to use. The Heuristic Hackstar, the Pyrodisc, and then for your last elemental gem slot, you can use either the Explosive Epilogue, Cubic Curtain, or the Volatile Velocity. They're all interchangeable. And for your cosmic gem slot, you want either the Vampiric Vanquisher or the Berserk Battler. The Heuristic Hackstar is the crux of the build. It's what makes everything you do function. It's what makes the Neon Ninja one of the fastest clearing classes in game. Very big ability, doubles your critical damage and makes your shuriken AoE. Mandatory for the class. Pyrodisc is a gem you want to focus on getting. It increases your movement speed and gives you another damaging AoE ability. Once you get it, it doesn't matter what its stats are, as you can reroll those stats later. The ability is just too useful not to have. The last of the elemental gems you're running can be pretty much whatever, but the 3 best are Explosive Epilogue, Cubic Curtain, and Volatile Velocity. Explosive Epilogue increases your damage by a bit. Cubic Curtain is useful for survivability. It gives you 1 hit of invincibility in a dungeon, and Volatile Velocity just increases your shuriken's projectile speed a bit. They are all absolutely okay, just pick whichever one you think is best, or whichever one you get that rolls the best from your gem boxes. As for the Cosmic Gem, the 2 you want to pick are either the Berserk Battler or the Vampiric Vanquisher. They're both viable on the Neon Ninja. The Battler reduces your need for attack speed and increases your light, however the Vampiric Vanquisher increases your survivability. This one comes down to preference, so just pick whichever rolls best from your gem boxes or whichever you prefer. As for your gem stat priority, you want crit hit, crit damage, and physical damage. Now that we know the build and the stats, well, what's the strategy for running the Neon Ninja in dungeons? There are 2 ways you can play the Neon Ninja. You can either move backwards using backflip as your main movement ability, or you can face forward, trying to kill enemies and cycle through your speed buffs. I personally believe it's best to look forward, and here's why. You don't randomly slam into walls like a drunk white girl. When you're flipping backwards, your dungeon pathing isn't precise. It's about as precise as Michael Reeves doing surgery, and your momentum doesn't suddenly stop because you run into a mountain. I like to think of backflipping with the Neon Ninja as texting and driving. Think about how many families you're gonna kill by not looking where you're going when you're playing the Neon Ninja. If you're going to backflip as a Neon Ninja, at least remember to wear your seatbelt and get a sober ride home. Once you actually manage to make your way to a dungeon, what you want to do is use bombs to bomb in directly to the boss room. Usually you average about 2 and 4 bombs per dungeon, however it doesn't matter too much, just use as many as you need to get to the boss room. As for actually finding the boss room, there is a mod that puts a beam of light over every boss in-game. So the best way to bomb into a dungeon is usually just to stand above that and spam whichever button you have your bombs bound to until you make it into the boss room. Once you're in the boss room, you hit the boss 3 times, or if it's a cursed skull, you try and get the mobs bunched up, and then you hit the mobs 3 times. You backflip, and you shoot your shuriken at them. Once you end up shooting the shuriken, If you one-shot them, you want to immediately find the chest, hit it until it's open, and then you're on a timer. You usually have about 3 to 10 seconds of speed buffs. So as soon as you get the opportunity, you want to make it to the dungeon exit portal and start flipping and moving to the next dungeon. Once you're out of the dungeon, it's just wash, rinse, and repeat. Now that we know how to build and play the Neon Ninja, how do we level it? I recommend running dungeons on Saturdays. You get double XP, and you also get a daily XP bonus from an adventure, which means you have 4 times XP. However, I wouldn't recommend you play the Neon Ninja until you have another class that's Endgame. Farming for gems with the Neon Ninja when you have below 90% crit hit is a pain, so make the process easier and focus on farming up another class until they can farm gems for your Neon Ninja until it's 90% crit hit. Your stat priority on your gear while you're leveling goes movement speed and critical hit. Once you have those 2 stats on a piece of shadow gear, doesn't matter. Upgrade it to Radiant or Stellar, but save the rest of your crafting items for crystal gear. Don't use your tentacles once you have those 2 stats on your gear. Don't use your pearls to get extra stats, you don't need them while leveling. You can usually jump into a dungeon, clear it in a couple seconds with this setup, and then run on to the next dungeon. Once you end up making it to the Topside U8, you want to go to the Crystal Forge in the Topside and make yourself a crystal melee until it has either movement speed or energy regen as the stat below light. Then use your tentacles and pearls to upgrade that until it has the stats you want, and run Topside until you get the rest of your crystal gear. As for gems, you really want to farm up stellar gems with another class, again prioritizing crit hit, crit damage, and physical damage. It makes the process a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster than trying to farm up the gems with your Neon Ninja. As for getting your class gem, just wait until you have a class gem key and your 5 KPR on your Neon Ninja, and then take a stronger class to the Everdark, have that class clear out one of the dungeons, and then just swap over to your Neon Ninja and you can use the key to get the Neon Ninja's class gem key. If you don't have a stronger class, you can always just follow around and leech off someone. However, I recommend having a stronger class to farm up the gems for your Neon Ninja again. Once you have the class gem, the stats don't matter too much, as you can either change those later with gem augments, or you can use another class gem key to farm up a different one. Now the best emblem combo for leveling is the Trailblazing Emblem and the Sure Strike. Trailblazing helps you get from dungeon to dungeon quicker, but it isn't necessary early game. It's a huge quality of life boost, however, so if you don't have it, sub it out with the Martial Emblem or a different emblem until you have enough qubits to buy it. As for the Sure Strike, this can also be subbed out for the Martial Emblem if you don't have it. It just increases your crit damage by 20% for a few seconds, so it's generally better to have in the early game than the Martial, but if you don't have it, just use the Martial. As for your ring while leveling, just use the best physical damage ring you have. Crit hit is usually preferable while you're leveling, but it doesn't really matter too much. Just use whatever you have. Again, early game, you do enough damage with this setup to clear dungeons in seconds, so you want to focus on getting from dungeon to dungeon as fast as possible. That being said, you're going to want either the Rapt Berserker or the Animated Jug as your leveling ally, as they help you get from dungeon to dungeon and increase your physical damage. The general strategy for leveling and gaining XP is just to run dungeons in whatever Uber has your recommended level range. For example, say you're level 19, the best Uber to farm in is Uber 4 until you reach level 21, then you want to move on to Uber 5, so on and so forth. Use bombs to make it directly to the boss room so that you can be as efficient as possible while gaining XP and spend as little time at under level 30 as possible. Now, some people are going to comment about Bomb Royale being the most efficient way to level, and I agree when it comes to every class besides the Neon Ninja. With the Neon Ninja, you gain between 3 and 8% XP per dungeon on dungeon day, depending on your level in Uber, of course. And if you do enough dungeons to just outpace the amount of XP that you get from Bomber Royale, you'll be well on your way to 30. Now that you've seen the stats, build, and leveling strategy, go forth and run dungeons until you get 30 KPR and that cutie pie Trove girlfriend you've always dreamed of. Again, this is Chris, aka Relaxed Latest, signing out, and stay relaxed, my friend. Just a quick note after the video, if there's anything I missed or anything you want to ask in the comments below, be sure to do that. Feel free to subscribe, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, all that junk and noise, and this is Relaxed Latest signing out. Stay comfy.